In this lesson, we're going to apply materials to our particles to make them look like actual smoke. Alright, so let's go ahead and select our particle flow source. And I want to open up our particle view. Okay. Now, what I want to do is actually change my display. What I have is ticks. These little crosses are called ticks here. And if we go to our display operator in our event, you'll see that we can change this from ticks, and we want to go to geometry. Okay. Now, since I've switched this to geometry, you'll see that we can see these 3D cubes here. And the reason that this is showing up is because of our actual shape operator that we have in our scene. Now, if you want to use something like maybe a sphere or something like that, you're more than welcome to. But what I want to do is actually use what's called a shape facing. And this is different than a shape. You'll see we have shape here, and then we have a shape facing. So let's go ahead and click and drag this and replace our shape 001. Now, with this, what I want to do is go ahead and make this shape facing actually face a camera. So you'll notice in our parameters we have look at camera object. And what I'm going to do is switch to my perspective view. And I'm going to zoom out to where I can see this camera here. And I'm going to go ahead and click on none over our parameters and choose that camera. Now, what this is supposed to do is the polygons of that shape-facing object or geometry is supposed to go ahead and orient itself and face that camera. So let's select our building, and I just want to hit Z on my keyboard just so I can zoom in a little bit closer on these faces. And you'll notice that they're all turned every which direction. They're not actually facing my camera. And the reason that is because of this rotation operator that we have in here. This is actually overriding our shape facing. So if we take this and actually delete it, hitting delete on the keyboard, you'll notice that these faces have now faced our camera. Okay? So what I want to do at this point is go ahead and change the size of these faces. So let's go to shape facing. And let's take our size up to 30. And what this is going to do is make these really nice and big and give us plenty of room to put a smoke material on these faces. Now, I know what you're thinking at this point. You're going, okay, how is this going to look like smoke? And what we're going to actually do is create a really neat material to basically cover up the edges of these squares and appear in a smoke-like manner. Okay, so let's go ahead and close our particle view. And let's go ahead and create the material for this smoke here. So let's go to our material editor. And I'm just going to move off to the side here. I'm just going to pan around. Let me actually move my materials in here just a little bit better. Let me actually squish this down just so we can see this. There we go. And I'm just going to pan over here just to some empty area. And what I'm going to do is just drag in a standard material. Let's drag this guy in here. Okay, so we've got this standard material, and what I'm going to do is actually use a map called particle age. So let's go down to our maps rollout section and go down to particle age. And I'm just going to click and drag this in here. I'm not going to hook it up to anything just yet. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is actually use this particle age to create this smoke texture, but I want this smoke texture to kind of change colors based on our particle's age. So hence the name particle age map. Okay. So let's go ahead and actually hook this map up to our self-illumination node. So I'm just going to click on that node and drag to our input node of our particle age. Okay, so let's kind of move these maps around, give us a little bit of room here. And I'm going to double click on our particle age map and bring up our map parameters. Now what I want to do is actually change the color of my smoke. I do want it to start out as this black, thick smoke, and then I want it to change to like a dark gray. And then as it dissipates, I want it to be kind of a lighter gray. So I'm going to hit OK on this. And with particle age, we have these options underneath the colors, and this is basically controlling when the particles or when the material should change. So whenever our particles are birthed at 0 frames or 0%, it's going to be black. And as it gets halfway through its life, it's going to change to this dark gray. And then when it gets to the end of its life, it's going to change to this lighter gray. So it's really going to transition between these three colors. All right, so we've got this in there. Now before we move on, let's click on our self-illumination here. And just double click that so you can see your parameters here. And inside the blend basic parameters, we want to actually go ahead and check this self-illumination just to make sure that this works. And then we're going to take our diffuse color to a black. Okay. All right. So now we've got those changed there. And let's go ahead and see if this is actually working. So let's close our materials. And you'll notice that we still have this pink purple color going on here. And we haven't really associated that material with our particle flow source just yet. So let's go ahead and select that particle flow source. Now it's going to be kind of hard to pick underneath all that, all those faces and stuff. I have actually got it chosen right now, but I do want to show you an easy way to do this. You can actually hit this select by name and choose it that way, and you can see the PF source 001 there. Okay. Now with this selected, let's open up our materials and select this material that we've just created and go ahead and assign it. Now you'll notice that nothing has happened still. So let's close our materials, and we know that we've assigned this, and I know that it's been assigned, but it's not showing up on my particles. And that's because we haven't actually created the operator to allow materials to be applied to this particle system. So let's go to our particle view, and what I want to do is scroll down here so we can see our entire event, and we're going to use a material operator. Now we have a couple of different ones that we could use. Right now I'm hovered over the material static, and material static is basically a material that is going to be one solid color and it's never going to change. It's basically a material that can't be animated. Now we're going to be using a particle age map that we want to animate it. We want that smoke to come out as black and then go to that dark gray and then animate to that light gray. So we're going to use a material dynamic which allows that to happen. So let's go ahead and click and drag this in here. I'm just going to add it right below my delete operator. Make sure that you have that blue line. You don't want that red line because you'll replace something. Okay, so now that's in there, and you'll still see that there's no material that's been applied. So what we need to do is actually go to None and choose that material that we just created. Now if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we can see our scene materials, and we'll see material number 18, and you can see it's been applied to the particle. So if we double click on that, now you can see that a material has been applied. So let's close our particle view, and let's just do a quick render just to see what this looks like. Okay, now this is finished rendering, and you're looking at this and you're probably going, okay, that doesn't look like smoke at all. Okay, the color may look a little bit like smoke, but that's not smoke. We've got these really hard corners on here. It's still got the shape of those polygons, so how can we change that? Well, we're going to go ahead and utilize our materials just a little bit more to change that shape. So let's go ahead and close this out, and let's bring up our material editor. And what we're going to do now is we're going to actually use an opacity map to basically soften the edges of those square polygons. Okay, so at this point I'm going to go ahead and actually click and drag on my opacity. Now I'm not going to actually hook it up to anything. I just want to show you a different way of creating some maps here. So let's release this, and you'll see that we get a menu, and we want to go to Standard, and we're going to scroll down to Gradient, and we'll choose that, and that hooks up a gradient map for us. Okay, so I just wanted to show you a different way of creating some maps for your materials here. Okay, so now we've got this gradient in here, and what we want to do is go ahead and double click on this so we can see our parameters for our gradient map. And what I want to do is actually change this from a linear type gradient to a radial gradient. And this will give us this circular shape here on our gradient. Okay? Now what we're going to do now is go ahead and actually apply a couple of different maps to this gradient map to give us some texture for our smoke. So let's go ahead and go to color number 3, which is this white color, and we're going to click on None. And we're going to actually bring in what's called a noise map. Now, because we're working on smoke, you might be tempted to go ahead and use just a smoke map, and you can do that if you like, but I want to use noise because I have a little bit more gray to white values in here. This smoke map doesn't really have a whole lot of that information, so I'm just going to use noise. And you'll see that this noise has been applied, and you can see how this is changing our radial gradient here. And let's go ahead and click on that one more time to bring up our noise parameters. So what I want to do is actually change this over to turbulence, just to give this a little bit more irregularity. And that looks a lot like smoke there. And let's go ahead and click on our smoke or our gradient map again. And let's go to color 2 and click None. Now I'm going to use another noise map there, and you'll see that we have two different noise maps that have been applied to our color 2 and our color 3 here. So let's go ahead and click on noise for our color 3, or our color 2, I'm sorry. So we're going to be modifying this one. And let's go ahead and take this to fractal and see what that looks like. Okay, I might want a little bit more difference in there, so I'm going to go with the turbulence. And let's take our low up a little bit here, and you'll see that it begins to dissipate around those edges a little bit more. So let's go, we'll go to about 0.2 around that area. We might go maybe 0.15. And you can adjust some levels in here to make it a little bit brighter if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and just keep this at 5 here. Now, I don't have an exact science for creating this smoke map. I'm just going with what looks okay for my particular project at this time. If you want to spend a little bit more time creating these maps, you're more than willing to. Now let's go ahead and take a look at this map here. Let me just click on this color swatch, and you can see this is the smoke map that we're going to be applying here. So let's go ahead and close our material, and let's go ahead and do a quick render and just see what this looks like. Okay, so now this is finished rendering out. You'll see now that we've got this really nice, neat little texture here that actually looks like smoke. So we've just used our shape facing and really utilized our materials and textures to really create that smoke look. So what I really want you to get out of this lesson is that particles themselves are only half the work. We really use particles to just get the behavior information, and then we'll use materials and rendering techniques to get that really nice look whenever we're finished with our particles. Alright, so in the next lesson what we're going to do is we're going to actually create our fire to give this burning building a little bit more depth and a little bit more creativity.